As we get settled in, welcome back to opening beyond just stuff. And this will be a continuation of, in some ways, the stories that we tell ourselves. And so as we explored last time, our perception is a map. It's always a map. And it can be informed by our understanding. It can be tinted by our expectations. As we experience when we play that game of being beamed in to this human form for just a few minutes, like the thought experiment that the famous physicist Richard Feynman would sometimes do. Or even the difference between feeling our experience through the labels of thumb and hand and foot and right eyeball or whatever it might be, versus the experience of, sometimes this is called, drawing on the right side of your brain. It could be seen as interpreted. We won't get into the neuroscience, but could be interpreted more as, meditating on the right side of the brain, where it's less through our conceptual filter and a little bit more open to what actually is that raw sensory input that gives us our experience. If we were an artist, this would help us to actually draw what we see rather than what we think we see. And some of what this exploration is about is to see what it's like to actually feel what we feel rather than what we think we feel. And thrown into this whole mix is the way that science, especially physics, especially sometimes used the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, in spirituality to kind of shake up our expectations, as quantum physics can really get to us that way. And the exploration for today will touch a little bit on that quantum picture. Probably more just high school chemistry level, because that can take us pretty far. But as we embark on this, the kind of underlying question is, well, what really is shifting? If telling myself a different story about what makes up my body enables me to feel more or feel something differently, what is that shift? And can we come to know it from the inside out, experientially? And maybe not just swallow wholesale that because we have a different, scientifically validated map laid over our sense of our body, that it's that we're feeling. And so to get us started, maybe just a little bit of history of atoms and particles. So it goes all the way back to Democritus, this idea that maybe everything that is not just these objects that we see, but are actually comprised of little tiny, smaller particles. And around the time of Newton, this was kind of called like corpuscles. And you have like this kind of, billiard ball kind of idea of just like this just total stuff that is bouncing off of each other. That left gravity to be quite a mystery, spooky action at a distance, even though it was described by Newton. But that's a story for another day. You can even maybe feel for those physicists who, at the time, they were more natural philosophers, but who felt like, my goodness, when Newton came on the scene and after his work, there just wasn't a whole lot left for physics. He was able to describe so much. And there was in very broad strokes, maybe a sense of robbing nature of some of its mystery. Since in a very short period of time, so much could become predictable and understood through a few simple laws of nature. And of course, we know that that wasn't the end of the story. We'll pick up again with I can still remember the picture. I don't know if you have these flashbacks, but I can still remember the picture in my high school chemistry textbook. And it's the orbits, right? It's the orbits, and even like there's like the little nucleus, and then there's the orbits around the nucleus of the atom, of the electrons whizzing around. These electrons whizzing around. But even before that, and they had like a little blurb of history. I always kind of got into that. There was this idea that maybe these atoms were kind of like they call it the plum pudding model. Well, maybe there was just like these pluses and minuses. Like you literally, like in the book, it's like little pluses, little like you just kind of wonder if the image of the world is actually these little pluses and minuses when you're a ninth grader studying this. But there was an interesting experiment, and we'll use this as a way to play with our own perception of our body. There was an interesting experiment done by Rutherford, where he took a very thin, very, very, very thin gold sheet. So tried to get it as thin as possible and shot beams of particles at it and had detectors all around. And kind of the brilliance of the experiment was they so much anticipated basically it to go straight through. Maybe deflect a little bit, but if you're, shooting basically bullets through tissue paper, which was the analogy that Rutherford used, you would expect it to basically go straight through. But part of the brilliance of that experiment was that they put the detectors all the way around and even behind the source of those particles. Even though, there's no way you're going to shoot a bullet into tissue paper and it's going to bounce back. But that's what happened sometimes, very rarely. Most of the time, it just went straight through. And that's how we have that sense of, an atom is 99.999% empty space. Empty space, I'll put that in scare quotes for now. 99.99 empty space. But every once in a while, there would be a particle that would bounce directly back, which is odd. Again, it's like directing a bullet at tissue paper and having the bullet bounce right back. But that's what gave that sense of that within this larger atom, that there was a very, 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 very small core. Maybe I remember the analogy is like, it's like a marble. It's a marble, and the atom is the size of the stadium. So really big. And why talk about any of this? Well, that's part of the open inquiry here. But we'll go into our meditation, practice, inquiry, and see what it's like to feel our same old body in contact with the same old surface, ground, chair, cushion. With this mapping, this story in a way, that what we think of as just stuff, maybe our physical body, is in a way mostly empty space. And we'll see what electrostatic forces and maybe some wave functions and maybe some virtual particles mediating an interaction we might encounter on this adventure, or not. It'll just be part of this exploration of what are we breaking through? What are we allowing for? What is our experience? And how can that change, shift, depending on our assumptions and expectations? So can settle in for this adventure and close your eyes. And just can notice Notice what's happening on the inside. May have some reaction to some of what I'm saying. Some of us are very, strictly like a physicalism or treat science in a certain way. It's having a certain authority, truth. And some of us might have had experiences that really tie us to feeling a certain way about what quantum means for you personally. And while I don't profess to have a neutral view, I feel like above all, it's nice just to bring it home in a personal inquiry. For each of us. Taking some fuller, deeper breaths. And as we so often do in this first 30 minutes of the foundations practice, letting the out breath carry with it a sense of letting go and laying down into support. Take a few out breaths and just feel your shoulders laying down onto your torso. And then even your hands just laying down to your lap or however they're resting. Letting that sense of contact between hand and lap feel fuller, riper. I could even release some extra tension and holding in your hands, maybe even your arms. Right now, it's more the back of my hands that are resting on my knees. But for you, whatever is making contact, we have such a sense of our hands making contact, touch, the sense of one thing touching another, a solidity. the tangibility of that. And then beginning to notice that feeling of contact between your seat and the ground. And continue to use the out breath to let go and lay down more fully the weight of your body into the immediacy of that support. Right there. And even the pressure that results. The way your seat slightly spreads. And the substantiality of it all. Sitting like a mountain. And even let your awareness feel like it can pool down right at your seat, right at the very lowest part of your body in contact with the ground. And the felt sense of mutual contact. Force going from your body into the ground. Being perfectly matched by the support of the ground into your body. Action, reaction. And whatever our feeling and our expectations of what we might feel there at our seat, let's insert that layer of a map, that picture from physics. of atoms being almost entirely empty space. So what's touching? But it's certainly not that more solid stuff of the nucleus touching. So we encounter this feeling of real contact, touch, and yet it's the quote unquote empty space that carries that repelling force. So that in a way, and this is all in a way, it's all a version of a story. One way to picture it. In a way, we're levitating. In a way, we're hovering. Kind of like the monorails or magnetic trains can hover, except there's no way to slip anything in between. But we're sitting here fully in contact with the ground. And yet, and yet, so last week we used more imagination or a sense of accessing more direct feeling. And here we're, in a way, I'm going to be saying that a lot. We're, in a way, opening to the unknown for ourselves, opening beyond our preconceptions. Because science, in a way, is telling us, yes, that's more the picture of reality, what's going on. And we could go further where those electron clouds that are repelling each other in the seat and in the ground are probabilistic wave functions, whatever that means. And that even that force of repulsion is mediated by virtual photons, whatever that means. And sitting here with our awareness pooled at our seat, feeling what we feel, and perhaps a little more opening to the unknown. Of what is happening there. And then returning to your hands and your lap. That seemingly so evident, so commonplace experience of the hand touching something. And maybe feeling like you have a way of questioning what is happening. Is it really just what my picture thinks it is? And we started with places of two objects, hand and lap, or body and ground coming into contact. This is going on everywhere. All through your body. every part touching another part. Is this empty space? That's not quite empty, but is not quite our expectation of stuff either. What's touching what? What fills us out? Why do we even take up space instead of collapse down into our own little, I don't know if we could form a black hole, but yeah, neutron star, sorry. What's it like to feel that it's 99.9999% quote unquote empty space that allows us to take up space as human form? And just notice what you might be feeling just by this different story about the body. And that core inquiry of ours here, for today at least, of what really does the shift consist of in my experience? And then we'll gradually shift to just feeling the air coming in and out of our nose. And usually we touch in on this feeling as a way to feel some of the fineness of nature's flow. Since we do have more commonplace expectation of the air being free flowing and very fine without a limit to its grain size. But we've already blown way past that with this. And so yeah, let's feel the subtle contact inside our nose of air and nose. Though very light, there's enough shift in pressure that it can register a sensation there. It's contact. And so as we play our usual game of what's the finest flow I can feel here at my nose, we often do as part of our foundations. Letting all that we've contemplated about what contact consists of in this picture perhaps aid that opening to the finer feeling of flow than what we've ever quite felt before. And we can see if we feel something different if we think about even those atoms of air coming in contact with atoms of our nose. As both being mostly empty space. Do we even find a shift if we contemplate that empty space is somehow full and yet not full of probability clouds of where electrons may be. or even the quantum field. That could be said to be mediated, that interaction, creating that repulsion. Sometimes that's given as a picture of being mediated by virtual photons. And all of that can sound very cool, at least to some of us. And some of us may as well feel shifts in our experience as we contemplate this, as we feel the breath at our nose. And sometimes we've talked about here with the free flow quality of nature, how it's fractal like, ever finer flows within flows, practically infinite. And maybe some of this picture from physics opens us up to more finely feeling. Something so simple as the breath right at our nose. But this can also be a kind of juncture in the practice where you really inquire into, am I even feeling an individual atom of air? Let alone all of these finer flows within flows, even within an atom. And so if my experience is shifting, what's actually allowing that? Is it what physics tells us? Or is it a letting go of what we usually tell ourselves? Or is it some of both? And we'll do a little visualization here where you can breathe in and feel like the air is filling your entire head. And as you breathe out, it's like all that's left is 99.999% empty space. And that, doing that for your arms and shoulders, breathing in, like the air is filling that space. And as you breathe out, becomes mostly empty space. Repeating for the torso. You can even feel the air, the air filling your lungs and even filling all through your body, all through your torso. And then on the out breath, it's just mostly, very much mostly empty space. And repeating for the hips and legs. And for a moment, feeling the space all around your body. Above, the sides, front and back. And feeling the space inside your entire body. And feeling like the space around your body permeates through the space inside your body. In between all those atoms made of 99.99% space. And then even just feeling the space around your thumbs, the space inside your thumb. And let the same space outside permeates the space inside. And notice what lets you know you have this thing we call a thumb. And the space it takes up in space. Noticing the clarity and the fuzziness of the outline. The 3D surface of your thumb that encloses your thumb within it, along with a lot of space. And is surrounded by space. All the way to the very tip of the thumbs on both hands at once. What if the pointer finger was also feeling surrounded by space? And filled with space, its volume, and really, really filled with space, really permeated through by a spaciousness, by a subtlety, by a totally non-clunky, non-clumpy, unfolding of whatever we put a label to it. It's a bit beyond our comprehension. What is actually going on to give our fingers the space they occupy. Opening to the unknown. The subtlety beyond any map we've yet experienced. Just in our pointer finger, all the way to what we call the tip of the pointer fingers. both hands. And feeling our pointer fingers and our thumbs all the way to their tips. Let's do what we did last time. Actually, that was a poor way of introducing it. Let's just fall back into our memories of what we did last. But maybe we get to experience it anew. Gently, slowly bringing your pointer finger and your thumb tips closer and closer. The space between them becoming smaller and smaller until they seemingly or actually touch. And letting yourself feel into the immediacy and the mystery of just that. And see what it's like to feel to the tips of the 3 extended fingers. All 3 of those fingers surrounded by space, filled with space, permeated through by space. And the space inside the hole made by your pointer finger and thumb. And the space of the pointer finger and thumb. The space inside the palms of your hands to the back of the hand. The space that the palms hold. Feeling the space around, the space through. Both hands all at once. And then extending that to the entire body. Once again, the space all around our physical body, all through it. And what is inside and what is outside. And what is body and what is perception. And what is this experience of ourselves? Since these are questions without really needing an answer, just the opening to the asking of them. If you'd like, can just shake out your hands. Give them a big shake. And for our final minutes, just even come down to lying down. Signal our whole body, whole system. That maybe this is more like the beginning, where we just felt the breath and a letting go. And if you've come down to lying, again, just letting the out breath give that sense of letting go and laying down. And maybe this is even a metaphor in a way for how we can have certain maps that we assume and we take to be the end of the line, the kind of end of the story. Like, oh yeah, my hand. Just this stuff at the end of my wrist. My body. This object that I just move about. and how we might tend to not feel our body very richly, not even feel very embodied as we go about our days, because we kind of stop at that sense of that's just what's there. That's all there is to it. And just feeling into your own experience of having a body, being embodied. After an exploration like this, all the way to the tips of your fingers, all the way to entire back body, in contact, and maybe with a little fun and awe, also levitating. Is there something we've let go of? And has that enabled us to encounter a richer, fuller map, perception, sense of who we are? Opening to the unknown, perhaps with some encouragement, permission, whatever you feel the science picture enabled for you. And encountering not a concept, not a word, not something that is an experiment that happened many, many decades ago in some lab, but a immediacy of experience right now. Something you can know more directly. And resting into that. Now just be quiet a minute or so to give a little space and time. Or we might become a little more familiar with the unfamiliar. Welcome to keep resting into more the immediacy of your own experience. And gradually begin to transition and my thanks all for going on this adventure here with me, here with us. Hope to see you back for another, and we'll have some time here for what this experience, what this inquiry was like for the person for whom it matters, which is for each of us. Now come up here. And say hi, first of all, to David. So many emojis. And Swiss R, good to see you back too. Laura, hello from Arizona, US, and sending love and blessings. Laura, welcome. Thanks for joining. Neil, good evening from the UK. Good evening to you. A little bit later there for you than Arizona. Charlie, I think you might have been the one who came to Tai Chi as well and did choo choo choo. That's quite a few loves. You must have put in quite a few copy and pastes, I hope. Having to write those out each time. And tell me more what connected for you. Tell us more. Matt, hey. Yes, hi, Mackenzie, and thank you. Thank you. Kara. Thank you, Kara. Your icon looks familiar, but I can't say. Oh, I think maybe you're new. Maybe you're new. Let me know. Let me know. Always welcome. David says, I feel like I've been floating around for the last hour or so. Interesting, right? Has your mostly empty space been floating around in mostly empty space? And why do we not tend to feel that usually? Swissar, thank you, Mackenzie. Thank you, Swissar. It's always so good to see you back. David, most definitely. All right, so we have clarity. We definitely have clarity. Yeah, I have a story I love from Richard Feynman when he was giving his some of his famous Feynman lectures, and he said it was like on day 3 of the conference or so on quantum mechanics, and he said, for those of you who are joining, because he looked down the audience and there was like a lot of more new people. And he said, those of you who are just joining, you're not going to understand this, but the people who have been joining for the last few days are not going to understand this either. So it's kind of the feel of don't need to try and understand this, because even the physicists who dedicate their lives to trying to understand quantum consider it a mystery in many ways. Vervain, some of your reflections brought a new meaning to the phrase, I'm feeling empty inside. Yes. Usually we can, feel free, Vervain, to share more on that. But sometimes we can feel empty, like a deficient empty. I think that's I feel so empty inside, hollowed out. And some of what can be interesting to play with is when we feel ourselves to be more empty. And here we're just literally meaning, empty space. So I do want to keep putting that in quotation marks, because I don't, it is full of something. It's not our usual perception of just stuff. But when we feel more empty, I don't know if any of you kind of felt a little bit more of that fullness of unembodied feeling. It's like, huh. And just that open question of how, what is the dynamic here of, is it that we've reached a map that, like, okay, that's the better map, or is it a letting go of an assumption? I don't know. I'll leave it. I don't know. I have my thoughts, as you can probably tell, but I don't know. Firefly, love the name. Caught the end of this. Love the space physics exploration. Hope to catch the whole session next time. That'd be great. Yeah. I do record these and eventually they come out somehow freely, but I'm way backlogged. Yeah, it says newer. attended a few of your groups. I so enjoy you and your practices. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful that you're back. I felt like your icon was somewhat familiar, but my goodness, I don't claim to remember everything. Firefly. Love the Richard Feynman lectures. Another fan of Richard Feynman. Vervain, literally as well as metaphorically, yeah. I think that was relating to the feeling empty inside. Whatever literally means in this context, yeah. I was like, how many times am I going to say in a way during this session? It's always, when maybe if there's anything, it begins to help us hold our labels just a little more lightly. Empty space, stuff. And not that we have to know what it is exactly, but that pointing in a more opening direction towards the fullness of experience can help us encounter something that if we're like, oh, maybe this will be more the theme for next time, is how Lao Tzu says the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. So if we have these maps that are of the terrain and we take one of the maps as that's it, that is it. And maybe if we do that at any level, there's a kind of a limitation, because as Master Park says, who is my Tai Chi teacher, my collaborator for the last 10 plus years, the map is not the terrain. The Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. So whatever it is, even if we're down to, particle physics, and I'm really not so sure how much we understand or know what that theory is telling us, it's not the terrain itself. It's always a map, a story of what is. See, David writes, I have a touch of pneumonia. Oh my goodness. On top of everything this week. And it was great to feel so empty for a while and so much lighter now. I'm mostly not here. Yeah. So I do have a dissolving pain series that I know, David, you've experienced too. And even a lot of what we were doing of feeling the space around our fingers and space occupied by our fingers and permeating through our fingers, that also comes from Dissolving Pain in Open Focus by Dr. Les Femi. And so there's few things that take our body and make it feel more like, just like chunky stuff than an injury or an illness. Pain. That's why we tend to brace around pain. And my goodness, it's probably, this will more reveal my age. It's probably I was probably 18, and in like year 2000, you know, Deepak Chopra's Quantum Healing. I read that book and was like, I came more from the scientist kind of skeptical view, but you feel something. You feel something. And I think that some of what we're exploring here is how we don't necessarily have to take sides, but that we can find what helps us in our own experience to more fully feel just what is there. And that can include we are sick with pneumonia and we feel we can breathe a little easier. We feel a little lighter. And for me, that not that we're after the benefits, because that can also mislead us if we're, oh, this helps me, so then I'm going to go with that. And this is where the way that Master Wanchil Park really lets us kind of open to the unknown through more of the established physics rather than quantum. Includes quantum, but doesn't rely on a particular picture or interpretation. Can help us, we'll see, can help us access that sense of opening and possibility that feels like, more just laying down the burden. Instead of an adding, like, wait a second, now I've got to feel, this electrostatic repulsion between my atoms, and it's actually a quantum probabilistic wave function, and it's what field theory, and there's mediated by force carriers, like that gets like, how can I carry that around? It can like blow open my mind for a session or two, but I can't really carry that around. At least I can't. So it's like, how do we make this livable? How do we make this real? Carol, I see a couple of your questions. I'm going to pop back up and see what I missed up above while I was going off. So is David, pneumonia? I do hope you feel better. Firefly says, conceptualizing space really helps me get out of my head, ironically. Yeah. Have you read any Penrose? Perhaps consciousness, another aspect that would be fun to explore. Yes. No, I have not read any Penrose. Can tell me why I should read more Penrose. I'd be very open to any suggestions you have. And I think that will be, why not? If we're going to be playing with quantum, let's get into some observer and observed and consciousness. Yeah, let's just have a ball. Might as well. David, you got my phrase. In a way. Soon that's going to be like my like-alike. It's like in a way, the most appropriate term to use, I think, as everything is kind of like that in reality, in a way. Oh, I so enjoy that. Vervain, yeah, sort of. I love that you're riffing off of each other, even. It'd be fun if this was a live conversation. Carol, what can I read up? Yeah, so can Google, I'll just type his name, Wanchil Park. Needs 2 L's. and several books. For this series, probably Now Flow, Breath, Movement, and Mind would be quite helpful. Yeah, and that's where you can read up on his work and co-authored that book. I am not a physicist. Master Park is a physicist, and yeah, this was fun. This was fun all. So I'll say till next time. Carol says it's very hypnotic. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about hypnotism. Carol, can you say a little bit more about what is hypnotic about it? What does that experience mean for you? Does it make it kind of like calming? Disassociative work. Okay. All right, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's why I even wanted to follow up. And that can, I think, be some of the it's the kind of language Ericksonian hypnosis uses. Okay. You guys are really educating me. Why I love coming on Insight Timer. Tap into the wisdom here. You do that. All right. If you'd like to share more of your experience, then that's always interesting to hear. The feeling the space between, like the space between your eyes and these kinds of things, my understanding from reading Dr. Femi is that is part of hypnosis to some degree. I think for me personally, my experience is that, and this might be, but Carol, you've come to several of my sessions, so you see that it's not always like quantum weirdness. Let's see, Carol says, I'll get the books. Yes, the hands, faces between. It's very disassociative. Okay. Yeah. Which loosens up the mind. Yes, I love them. Okay. So, yeah, I think the phrase disassociative is interesting because it's can imply a sense of removing oneself from one's experience. And one possibility could be just like kind of depends on how you kind of arrange your maps. So one possibility could be that we kind of have a cartoon version. Yeah, Carol, not in a bad way, but a good way. Okay, yeah. Yeah. And and there can be times when disassociation can be good. Sometimes it's a very important thing. But it's like just interesting language, right? So even like take David's experience where he had this pain of pneumonia, coming down with pneumonia. And we can have like a very almost like kind of coarse-grained cartoon sense of, oh, my body and it hurts this way and I am this way and yada, 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 right? And some of this feeling of spaciousness and what I would say even more generally, the sense of nature's flow underneath. So kind of peeling back some of the cartoon-like maps of our labels and our concepts. And we still have perception, we still have concepts, but we kind of get to these layers where they're less oriented in the familiar way. And like, I love that phrase, like it loosens up the mind, right? So you can feel like you're free floating. You can feel so much lighter. You can feel very different than you usually do. And one kind of metaphor image for that is, instead of like, oh, I'm kind of floating above my experience or rising above my experiences, actually I'm peeling away extra heavy concepts and maps and assumptions that are not really needed. And I'm actually getting closer to the directness of my experience. So that's just for whatever it's worth, that kind of way we even talk about and frame our own experience. And it's certainly hard to talk about these kinds of experiences, especially through comments in chat. I get that. David says, yeah, if all else fails, just try with our magnet switches around. Magnets switched around. Okay, yeah, there you go. Firefly, he wrote, the large and small of the mind, very physics dense, but conceptually interesting, could be an opening to how thoughts spontaneously arise and facilitation of disconnecting from them conceptually. Cool. I think that related to maybe more about Penrose. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely check that out. I am doing some work in philosophy, so this will be great. Firefly says, as a biologist, I always had issues with thoughts aren't yours, but quantum mechanics provides a scientifically valid solution, so to speak. Yeah. Oh, we could go on forever. I so wish we could chat about this. Yeah. I mean, I would just have so many questions about the thoughts aren't yours. Yeah. I mean, who are you? That's part of the fun here. What do we get to claim as us? And that does, yeah, 3 purple hearts to that, and that does. It does have meaning at many levels, and then there's some levels where it just gets interesting. David says, I've got a few spare hours. Well, I unfortunately am back on deadline, so I do not, but my goodness, I've really had a blast with you all and learned here from you, and that's just so fun. I have several things to check out when I get a chance, and hope to see you back and continue the adventures. Take care all.